Hey Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Jim Reverick is a new rookie, replacing Bobby Rotesta. Same with Nick Shift, who is also a new rookie, replacing Ernie Gearson. And an anonymous Piston Cup fan had this to say about all of the new next generation racers. And, oh no! Jack DePost would do awful in practice. And Gearson Motorsports had some of their engines stolen by an unknown car who has since been banned for life from ever attending Piston Cup races. And then Jack DePost would get fired by TowCap! Why? It's not even his fault! The engines got stolen! And when he was doing bad in practice, it wasn't even that bad! Since Team TowCap did not listen to me, they found a replacement racer. This is J.D. McPillar, who will replace Jack DePost, and he is a new rookie, racing in the Piston Cup. Now into the starting grid where Jackson Storm starts at pole position again with H.J. Hollis, who's outside. Row 2 has Nick Shift in his very first Piston Cup race, and Aaron Clockert, who's outside. Row 3 has Ryan inside Laney, and Bubba Wheelhouse to his outside. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 4 has JP Drive, the runner-up from last race, and Harvey Rodcap, who's outside. Row 5 has Richie Gunzit and Ed Trunken to his outside. And Row 6 has more next-generation racers, Green Bean Carafine, and Barry DePedal. Now on to Row 7, where Dan Garcia will be starting alongside Jim Reverick in his very first Piston Cup race. J.D. McPillar will also be making his first start, starting on the inside of Row 8 with Pitbull Speed Racer, who's outside. Row 9 has Tim Treadless and the first stock car, Cal Weathers, starting on the outside. Row 10 has two stock cars, Bobby Swift and Lightning McQueen, both Piston Cup champions. Row 11 has Brick Yardley and Ralph Carlo to his outside. I wonder how they'll do this race. And Row 12 has got Reb Meeker and Rev Rodages to his outside. And now on to Row 13, where Ricky Axel will be starting alongside Darren Leadfoot. And Row 14 has Maury Clutchburn, who's been in every race since 1985, and Arthur Carstrode, who's outside. Row 15 has Jimmy Cables, get it together, and Buck Beeringly, who's outside. Row 16 has Todd Marcus and Lane Locke, who did pretty well during practice. Row 17 has Ryan Thunderbolt Jr., who surprisingly qualifies again, and Brian Sparks, who's outside. Row 18 has Dirksen D'Agostino and Tommy Highbanks, who both had a disappointing qualifying run. And Row 19 has Chip Gearings and James Garrison. What are you guys doing back here? Row 20 has Dino Draftsky and Paunchy Wipeout, who only has one career victory. Row 21 has Terry Cargis and Alex Bloman, starting in 42nd, just like last race. And starting in 43rd is surprisingly Eric Ismond, making his first start this season. And these 7 cars somehow failed to beat Eric Ismond in qualifying, among many others. Now, let's get on to the race, where Jackson Storm would lead the first 50 laps of the race before losing the lead to Lightning McQueen, who would lead on lap 50 before losing the lead to Jackson Storm, who would then lead all the way until lap 100, where he would finally lose the lead to JP Drive, who would lead until lap 102, but then he'd lose the lead to Harvey Rodcap, who would lead for 4 laps until lap 106, where JP Drive would take the lead once again, leading until lap 109. But JP Drive would go to pit, which would then lead H.J. Hollis to take the lead on lap 109. But then Jackson Storm would take the lead again, and then lead until lap 149, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again. He would only lead for a few yards before Bubba Wheelhouse would take the lead. He would also lead for only a few yards before Jackson Storm would take the lead again and lead for 50 more laps before Pitbull Speed Racer would take the lead, leading the field into lap 200, where Jackson Storm would retake the lead and lead for 37 more laps. But on lap 236, Brick Yardley would be 20th, where he would accidentally wreck Brian Sparks, Ricky Axel, and himself. I feel bad for all 3 of them. And then on the next lap, on lap 237, Todd Marcus would be 24th, where he would accidentally wreck Tommy Highbanks, Bobby Swift, Rev Rodages, and himself. I feel bad for all four of them. Aaron Clocker would take the lead after the restart on lap 238, but then Jackson Storm would push Aaron Clocker out of the way, and as a result, Aaron Clocker would now be out, and this makes him the first next generation racer to fail to finish a race. And Eric Ismond would go down a lap as a result of a long pit stop. And due to the push, many Piston Cup fans would boo Jackson Storm. H.J. Hollis would take the lead on lap 238 and then lose the lead after a few yards to Green Bean Carafine, who would lead for about 10 yards before losing the lead to, you guessed it, Jackson Storm, who would lead the field into lap 239. But later that lap, JP Drive would take the lead. He would only lead for a few yards before Jackson Storm would take the lead again, leading all the way until lap 244. And then JD McPillar would take the lead and lead his very first lap in the Piston Cup before Jackson Storm takes the lead again and then leads for the next 106 laps? How does any car lead for 106 laps in a row? And also it's the final 106 laps of the race. How does any car lead for that long? Jackson Storm, stop hogging the lead. Leave some laps for the rest of us to lead. And as a result, Jackson Storm will be the winner of the 2016 Mood Springs Sputter Stop 350. And Bob Cutlass says, oh, what a finish at the end of the race. Nick Shift would finish second in his very first Piston Cup race, with JD McPillar finishing third, Tim Treadless fourth, Bubba Wheelhouse fifth, H.J. Hollis sixth, Lightning McQueen seventh, Ed Trunken eighth, Lane Locke ninth, and Terry Cargus rounding out the top 10. Dino Draftski would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 34th. And I already went over the top 10. Nick Shift and JD McPillar get a top 3 finish in their very first race. Lightning McQueen is the highest finishing stock car, finishing 7th, beating Ed Trunken. Lane Locke somehow beat Next Generation Racers. Buck Beeringly had a very good race, finishing 11th, beating Ralph Carlo, Jimmy Cables, Reb Meeker, and Ponchi Wipeout to round out the top 15. Dirksen D'Agostino also had a good race. Same with Darren Ledfoot, finishing 16th and 17th. JP Drive! How did you finish all the way down in 18th? Same with Harvey Rodcap in 19th, and Pitbull Speed Racer to round out the top 20. Richie Gunzit finishes 21st, earning 100 points. Ryan Inside Laney, Green Bean Carfine, Cal Weathers, and Dan Garcia round out the top 25. Barry DePedal! How did you finish 26th? And Jim Reverick finishes 27th in his very first Piston Cup race. Murray Clutchburn finishes 28th. Chip Gearings finishes in the top 30, despite his team underperforming this race. Arthur Karstro rounds out the top 30. James Garrison finishes all the way down in 32nd. The only cars on the lead lap he beat were Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. and Dino Draftski. And 35th to 43rd, unfortunately, could not finish the race. Aaron Clocker, you are a next generation racer. How do you fail to finish the race? Now, here's the top 20 in points. I do not need to talk about the top 3 because it is still Lightning McQueen, Cal Weathers, and Bobby Swift. Although, Jimmy Cables overtakes Brick Yardley to take 4th in points. Tim Treadless is the first next generation racer in the standings, being 6th in points. The next 2 racers, Harvey Rodcap and Ed Trunken, are also next generation racers. Rep Meeker is 9th in points, and Aaron Clocker rounds out the top 10. JD McPillar is 11th in points because he takes Jack DePost's points. His team owner, James Garrison, is 12th, followed by Ricky Axel, Kevin Carvick, and Ryan Inside Laney to make up the top 15. Dan Garcia, Martin Carrix Jr., Maury Clutchburn, Ralph Carlo, and Todd Marcus are all in the top 20. Todd Marcus is 70 points ahead of Chip Gearings in 21st.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
We've all probably noticed that over the last 5 races, Jackson Storm leads way too many laps. Jackson Storm, you don't need to lead all of the laps to win a Piston Cup race. JP Drive, HJ Hollis, the other next generation racers, even stock cars, please work harder and take the lead from Jackson Storm sometimes so that Piston Cup fans can have fun. It's not fun watching Jackson Storm lead every single lap. Let's hope that is not the case for the 23rd race of the 2016 Piston Cup season. The video covering that race will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. The Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin, on February 24th, 2022. Today, it is May 10th, 2025, when I recorded this video. But that doesn't change the fact that Vladimir Putin's tyranny has been ruling over parts of Ukraine for far too long, around 1/5 of Ukraine's territory, which includes Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts. Why did this war need to start? Did Vladimir Putin forget that Russia is already the biggest country in the world? We here at the Cable at Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny and recognize Ukraine's true borders, which are shown on this map, which include all of the Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Kharkiv oblasts, as well as Crimea and all of the Donbass. What you see on this screen is Ukraine's territory. My message to Ukraine is to not give up. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava! Nechai Shvitsya Daroratsya, Ukraini Permoha! Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. May Ukraine be granted victory very soon.